What's good, Lucky Lefty Podcast? I am your guy, SD2 Mics. We are brought to you by Onora Whiskey. OnoraWhiskey.com is that premium American whiskey. OnoraWhiskey.com. And if you drink, by all means, make sure you do so responsibly. Left is traveling down Route 1, the 405, trying to make it home from practice. Hopefully he can get in. If not, we're going to give you something that was probably a little bit of a departure from what the intended show was about. So we're going to tease that because it's the question of the day. But we want to start with breaking news, and that is that Notre Dame and Under Armour, according to a report by Yahoo Sports, have reached a deal, 10 years, $10 million annually, which supersedes what most people thought Notre Dame was going to get. And as far as the offer, a lot of people are saying that the other challengers really never came close to Under Armour. And it doesn't strike me as being strange because there's only one thing that I had a problem with when it came to Under Armour. And I'm going to tell you why Notre Dame and what we saw over the weekend and today makes me feel good about the pressure they're going to put on Under Armour. It's one thing to expect Under Armour to live up to their end of the bargain. It's one thing to request that they live up to their end of the bargain with their apparel deal and how they can impact Notre Dame football moving forward. We're going to talk about that. How'd you like those uniforms? Did you like the Show Me the Money video of Marcus Freeman, Audrey Esteban, Sam Hartman? I thought it was pretty funny. I loved it. I thought it was pretty funny.
I loved it. I just like, I was kind of like, okay, can they top what they did last year? Which I thought was classic with Marcus Freeman and Isaiah Foskey and Michael Mayer and the Golics. And I thought they did because like, that's more my kind of, I'm more Jerry Maguire than I'm Hangover. I still have actually never watched Hangover in its entirety. So I thought it was a really cool video. I did. And I thought the outtake at the end was really well done. I thought that was great too, to get that little outtake where he said it, show me the money instead. But no, I thought it was really cool, man. And just some little things you notice, like Ron Paul was looking around right in front of the Sports Illustrated art magazine cover with him. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, man, I just thought it was really cool, really well done. It's just some of those little things that Notre Dame is doing to stand out. We've always said you got to do more and more and more with your media team, and they're starting to. This is something that they've done. So on top of some of the other things, but no, I thought it was really cool. Cause like, look, Shaun, you and I have both had a chance to be around Coach Freeman and talk to Coach Freeman and what you see is who he is. Like he's fun. He's funny. He's engaging. He's, he's not trying to be hip. He's 37, right? I mean, he is young. He is that guy. He did grow up in these, with these things. I mean, he's almost a decade younger than you and I, you know what I mean? And so he's being himself. I think maybe at times early last year, he felt he had to act more head coachy, you know what I mean? And I think by the end of the year, he was just back to being himself a little bit more. Now we're seeing it in all aspects of it, man. I thought it was I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was well done. And I liked the uniforms. I didn't initially, because I saw the all green. I said, it looks all right. Like I wasn't, but when you see it with the gold helmet, to me, that's what brought it all together. When I saw the picture of Audric and then there's one of him and Sam where they both have the gold helmet on, it just, I don't know what it is about the gold helmet with those green, Shaun. It just brought it out to me. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I feel that now. I can get with that now.
They didn't grab me. They weren't like, oh, those are dope.
Yeah. Like those 15 ones.
Yeah. But I was like, okay, I get it. And to go along with the video, I thought it was a nice rollout. I thought it was a well-done rollout. The most important thing for me, as we parlay this into the Under Armour deal, is that I think what we saw this weekend from the media standpoint, I think we saw Notre Dame taking the opportunity to take a step forward with their media and really kind of put a push on, not just in recruiting, but the uniforms and everything. And I think one of the things we need to recognize with this deal is that the Under Armour deal was done so long ago. I don't think anybody really looked at the nuance of the apparel deal when it was originally done and asked Under Armour, how can you impact our program? It was just pretty much uniforms, Shamrock Series. Times have changed. Notre Dame now must put the pressure on Under Armour. And we pretty much knew when Jack Swarbrick sat down with multiple people and what he laid out, what they were looking for. We have to be top priority. Okay. We knew nobody else fit Notre Dame ethically. Right? And if Under Armour was going to come with the best offer, that was pretty much it. The writing was on the wall. So with all of that being said, it's not so much, I've been on record. I don't trust Under Armour. I don't. Just from the past, I don't trust them to do right by Notre Dame moving forward. They're going to have to prove it to me. But at the same time, Notre Dame has to take the stand that this is the standard we need. I don't know if it's going to be Pete Bavacco coming in and putting the pressure on Under Armour. I don't know if it's going to be Marcus Freeman. I don't know if it's going to be Notre Dame inside that building. But somebody has to make Under Armour feel, look, it's not just enough to outfit us.
Right.
You have to do a lot more. And we thank you for the money. Don't get me wrong. But you have to do a lot more than you did in the previous deal.
I would imagine, Shaun, that Notre Dame still has the stock thing that they kind of did last time. And so Notre Dame also has a vested interest in Under Armour as a brand growing, as well as what Under Armour can do for Notre Dame. You know, I don't think that I want to ask you this, Shaun. Do you think that everything you just said about what Under Armour needs to do you think that's just because of the times, or is it because of the fact that there's Marcus Freeman? Because I feel like a lot of teams don't, other than like the Jordan brand thing, but that's more about the Jordan brand than the team. I don't really feel like Nike necessarily hoists some other program above the others or whatever. It's Nike, right? Mm-hmm. And when Brian Kelly was here, this is not a shot at Brian Kelly. Don't take it that way, people. But it's like he's just like a normal older head football coach, right? It's like, just give us the gear, make it look nice so we can put it on recruiting pitches and let's just move on. I feel like with Notre Dame, Shaun, I'll ask you this, Shaun. Is your comment about that about it's just times have changed, social media, or is it more about it's a unique time at Notre Dame with not just Marcus Freeman, but Niall Ivey, Micah Shrewsbury, the lacrosse team just won a national championship. Like, it is a really unique time to say, hey, look, you're a struggling entity, right? Let's use that you just signed arguably the biggest name in all of college sports. Let's do it different this time. We're giving you a redo. Let's do it differently this time. What are your kind of, where are you at on that, Shaun?
Two ways you can look at that. Marcus Freeman definitely is a lightning rod. We talk about that like that dude makes anything you make look good. Yep. And Under Armour has to understand that. They have to understand, Brian, we talked about this. And let me stop short, because people might not disagree. They might disagree. Marcus Freeman is a superstar. If that man wins, watch out.
Yeah.
He is a flat-out superstar. He is a magnet. If fans had a chance to watch this man on a typical practice where recruits come in, Brian, I'm not overstating this, man. The line to take pictures with this dude, forget the players. I'm talking about the parents.
Right.
He is a star. He is magnetic.
Especially mothers. Yeah. Just being real. I'm just being real.
I said that before in this show. I had to clarify, like, he's a happily married man.
Yes, it's not
we're
that.
We're not trying to say anything.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, You cannot waste this opportunity. Of course, Marcus Freeman is going to have to win. All of that goes out of the window 3-4 years if you're not winning. But if he wins, and Under Armour can take advantage of the groundswell at the beginning of who he is, it's a windfall for them. I don't understand how they don't understand. Now, I do believe it's a possibility that they got caught off guard. From a production standpoint, they probably didn't know he was that charismatic coming in. They didn't know that what he wore was going to be in such high demand. They weren't ready for it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then they knew that they were getting ready to go into a walk year where negotiations were going to be taking place. So I can give him a pass for this past year. Moving forward, though,
right,
I can't give him a pass. Now, this is my question. How much can they really do? Let's say Notre Dame has a series of camps.
Mm-hmm.
How involved can Under Armour be in those camps? Where can Under Armour be as far as being plastered? Where can they be supplying shorts?
Yeah, all
gloves,
of that. I mean,
to these youngsters.
every time Notre Dame provides gear at camps, right? So you attend a Notre Dame camp, you get a shirt and all that kind of stuff go with it. It's Under Armour stuff, right? I mean,
yes,
they need to be saying Notre Dame, like, look, here's what we're gonna do. To me, though, Shaun, it's not even just about what they do around the kids. It's what you're doing. Just have a social. I mean, why are like when I'm very curious to see a couple things when this deal becomes public. If Ross Dellinger is correct, and Shaun, I think you and I both agree that when Ross Dellinger or Pete Thamel put something out there, it tends to be very well sourced. These are pros, right? When it comes to reporting.
Yeah.
And so I assume it's going to happen. You and I both heard the rumblings for a while that it was going to be Under Armour. The offers weren't really close. I'm curious to see what the actual numbers are and then what is in the contract, because Notre Dame's contract with Under Armour last time wasn't just about the $90 million, right? $9 million a year, but it was the stuff built in, the stock options and all this other kind of stuff. Jack Swarbrick's a lawyer. He's used to this kind of stuff, right? What are the demands in it? So here's for example, something that I would say is you guys need to have a much more active social media presence, especially when it comes to our gear. Here's an example of what I would do. Like, just first of all, a brand new marketing team that's just geared towards Notre Dame, number one, is a must if you're a smart business person in Under Armour, because it will pay for itself. But here's a perfect example. Okay, part of my marketing team, they are either coordinating with Marcus Freeman, or they don't even have to do that. They know the gear they sent Notre Dame. They have it already on, to put up into the store. The moment you see a video or a tweet or something from that day's practice with Marcus Freeman, you've got a Marcus Freeman store. This is the Marcus Freeman gear right here. And every time he rocks something, not every time, but just a lot of the time he rocks something, and I would even work this out with him. When you rock something, we're putting it into that store and we're making money off of it, right? Because that's going to then factor into building up Notre Dame's brand. There's all types of things like that. Sign 3 or 4 Notre Dame players to NIL deals.
Yeah.
And just promote the heck out of Notre Dame gear.
Yeah.
Right? Because you lost UCLA, you've lost Cincinnati, you've lost several programs. I mean, you got Auburn and Wisconsin, but like Notre Dame is your big brand.
Yeah.
There is no one else like Notre Dame there. If you want to build your company up, then you need to utilize that. It's like me having Michael Jordan on my basketball team or Barry Sanders on my football team and not getting him the ball, right? Like, I got this star, use it. I got Larry Bird set up in the post. I'm not going to feed him the ball. Like, that to me is what Under Armour's doing right now with Notre Dame and with Marcus Freeman. And because I actually really like Under Armour's gear. I think their shoes suck. That's another thing that I'm very curious what Notre Dame does. And I'm not talking about just the quality of them, Shaun. I mean, we've heard a lot of this stuff over the years where just the foot injuries tend to be greater in their gear. That's not just, I don't like them, they're not comfortable. That's that's player safety stuff related, right?
Right.
So that would have been, that needed, if I better find out that was part of the conversation, that Under Armour's committing to investing X amount of dollars into R&D for their gear. Or here's another part is, it didn't say in there that it definitely is for, all apparel, including shoes. We've heard Notre Dame say in the past that, Jack Swarbrick's talked about maybe letting players do their own shoe deals. Is there language built into the contract that lets Notre Dame players kind of do their own deals? Because then Nike can say, hey, look, if we still want to have a taste of this Notre Dame brand, but we're not going to give them $9 million a year, $10 million a year, what we'll do is we'll give their starting quarterback $50,000 just to wear our cleats.
Right.
We'll give their star defensive end or star tight end or star All-American left tackle $25,000 just to wear our cleats, and we'll provide the cleats. I'd be curious if there's something like that in there, but that's something that Under Armour needs to do. But just the marketing aspect, they have a giant in front of them. And you talk about Marcus Freeman, but I would add the same. I would also say that in the women's basketball landscape, if Niall Ivey can win and get Notre Dame to a Final Four, to the heights that she had as an assistant coach at Notre Dame and as a point guard at Notre Dame, because she won a national championship in both roles, she's another one. Notre Dame is one of those few brands in basketball that can be really effective. So that's part of this unique era of Notre Dame, where you've got these opportunities with a new basketball coach, with also a young and charismatic women's basketball coach. Some of Notre Dame's other sports are big time, where Under Armour can start maybe getting more into those sports now that they're the team they're with just won a national championship and all those type of areas. So I don't know, man. I don't have a lot of faith that Under Armour is going to do this. Unless it's contractually obligated, and that needs to be part of the conversation. If we find out that it was we just got the biggest deal from them, and there was really no push to do the R&D into shoes and to increase the marketing, then it's just, dude, you just took a big deal and you didn't actually do anything that's going to make your brand better. Because if you do this right, this also builds your brand in a generation, Shaun, that right now doesn't necessarily have the reasons to be Notre Dame fans that you and I had growing up when Notre Dame was, multiple time champion and big time powerhouse program and all that other kind of stuff. So it would be another missed opportunity by Notre Dame if it's not part of that conversation. So that's what I'm hoping to see, I'm hoping we find that out when that deal comes out.
No one is more happy than Kevin Plank today. Kevin Plank knows. He knew I can't lose Notre Dame. He knew. I think they had an uptick 3% in revenue this year.
This past year, yeah.
But that was after a couple of years, a few rough years, to say the least. So with everything that's being done right now, it looks good. The numbers look good. They super exceed what we thought. But ultimately, Fighting Irish fans, along with us, are just going to sit back and see what this deal entails, because it has to be more than just outfitting. And like you said, the shoes, especially. Look, man, I can't think of. Look, let me give you a little secret. Big Driss. I have a private prayer list for Notre Dame fall camp. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, I got a private prayer list. I got like 4 or 5 players that I pray for every night. I need these dudes to be healthy. Lord, hey, number 10, he needs to be healthy. Cam Hart, I need him to be healthy. Joe Alt, it's like, because Notre Dame, somehow, some way, it always is at the end of fall camp for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a shoulder, it's a foot, it's a lower
Cam Hart's hamstring,
hamstrings. It's like, what is going on? And you said it perfectly. The shoes aesthetically, which is crazy because Under Armour designed a shoe that solved Steph Curry's chronic ankle issues. When Steph Curry came into the NBA, he was rolling his ankle every year consistently. Signed with Under Armour. Under Armour figured it out, got him a shoe. He's been pretty good moving forward. Something needs to be done, and hopefully they can solve that issue. But I'm going to go and jump to this, Beatrice. Let me ask you this question. Notre Dame comes out with the Jerry Maguire video. They come out with the green uniforms. And I was sitting back today and I asked myself, I said, Self, Notre Dame was competitive with Ohio State last year. Is it possible that Notre Dame could be putting too much into one game? And I asked that question because I said, man, you know what? Part of me just wants Notre Dame to walk in just with this confidence, like, y'all in our building now.
Mm-hmm.
You're here now. And we have a signal call. Like, this is not last year. Let's go. And then you see the build up, you hear about the ticket sales. We've said it on this show, right? Sam Hartman was brought here for 3 big games. Starting with Ohio State in the
3 big regular season games in the postseason.
Absolutely, right? But it seems like that Ohio State game is taking precedent. And even though they don't start out with Ohio State, you can't tell me the players aren't thinking Ohio State at some point.
Sure.
Yeah, of course, they're thinking Navy going across. That Notre Dame team is chomping at the bit to get to Notre Dame Stadium on the night of September 23rd. It's an honest question. I promise you it does. It's not saying that they won't be ready.
No, I get what you're saying.
It means like, can you put too much?
Yeah, you can.
Into one game.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely, you can. I don't think today is evidence of that. And I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, because like it's either you do it now or you wait till like the week of and then hype it up then. Right? You needed to do the green jersey release at some point in time. I think they did it first week of fall camp last year as well.
Are you shocked they did I thought they would do the green jerseys for USC.
No, I think the Ohio State game was I'm not surprised by that.
You're
and I'm
surprised?
actually glad they're doing that. Yeah, because it just like here's my thing, Shaun. I think Ohio State's deep enough into the season, game 5, week 4, that you can look at it and say, like, there's a comment that Marcus Freeman made the other day in a quote to ESPN, and I was a little disenchanted in the manner in which it was portrayed. But it was Marcus Freeman and this team have not at all shied away from, in the offseason, the discussion of winning a national championship. And then he made comment the other day where he's like, take that conversation off of the table. We're worried about basically today. We're worried about Navy. And some people took it as, well, he's saying that, that the standard Notre Dame isn't the national championship. So no. You've got to be able to look at it from a micro and a macro standpoint, right? Macro standpoint, you can look and say, hey, look, this is the ultimate goal of Notre Dame, is to win a championship. It's to do this, 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 and this. Micro, all we can control is getting better today. Right? You can't win a national championship on Monday, July 31st in fall camp. Today's just a building block to get there. And so to me, you listen to Coach Freeman talk a lot, and all his conversations in the opening press conference were getting to Dublin. You could tell there was a messaging there. Hey, we're just worried about getting to Dublin and worried about Navy. Because I do think that the Navy game or the Ohio State game is placed pretty well for Notre Dame, because not only is it game 5, but it's like, hey, fellas, you can't be overlooking the triple option plus zero pressure fires that just crushed us in the second half last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But even if you do get through that, we got that Tony Gibson and Robert and I coordinator combination with Brendan Armstrong to worry about in week 3 down at NC State. So
yeah,
I think it's okay. I think it's set up okay for Notre Dame, right? Like last year, I wanted Ohio State in the opener. That was your best chance to beat them, was in game 1. If you know, if you'd have played them a month later, I don't think that game would have been close.
I agree.
I just don't. This year, I think it's good for Notre Dame. Now, you could say, well, Ohio State's got a new quarterback, blah, 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 blah. But their quarterbacks are going to go pretty. I mean, C.J. Stroud in his second game at Ohio State against, and keep in mind, C.J. Stroud played as many snaps as a freshman that Steve Angeli did. But his first year, he goes out second game against Oregon, throws for like 450 yards, right? Like Ohio State's quarterbacks are going to produce. You're either going to pressure that guy or not. I just feel like there's enough building blocks for Notre Dame and enough stuff in front of them that I don't know that the players are all that thoughtful of Ohio State right now. It's going to be in the back of their mind. But I don't think this jersey release, because if you notice it, nowhere in the release did they talk about Ohio State. Like, remember when they did the thing last year where they released the green? Because remember, they had a video last year with the green jerseys for the Cal game. Remember when they did that? So they actually had 2 jersey release kind of videos last year, one for Cal and then one for the BYU game. They're only doing one this year. So this is kind of what they've done. I don't think this is like something special for Ohio State. And they didn't even mention Ohio State, I don't believe, in the video or even in the release. Now, we all know it's for Ohio State. They've confirmed it's for Ohio State, but I think they're handling it somewhat well, Shaun. I do. I don't think that they're put too much on, because I think you're wise to say you got to make sure you don't put too much on Ohio State, because you could be out of the national title hunt by the end of the Ohio State game if you don't handle your business against Navy and NC State. So, and I think the players know that. So at least that's because look, NC State, they've never won NC State before.
It really wasn't about the schedule that precedes Ohio State. It was about the attitude. For me.
Yeah.
And, marketing, that's fine. For me, I want this Notre Dame team to feel like what's the word that I'm looking for? I want them to feel like Ohio State's in trouble. That's the attitude I want them to have. I want them to walk in that stadium that night, feeling like, okay, we got you exactly the way we want you.
Shaun, it's like this, man. It's I will sit here and argue with you all day, just not you specifically, anybody. And anyone that wants to listen to me, I'll tell them the 2011 Notre Dame team was significantly more talented than the 2012 Notre Dame team. Because the 2011 team had Harrison Smith, Robert Blanton, Michael Floyd, you had Tyler Eifert, you had Trevor Robinson, you had Darius Fleming. We could go down the list of guys that they had in 2011 they didn't have in 2012. A lot of NFL dudes. But there was one big difference between the 2012 team and the 2011 team. The 2012 team, for whatever reason, was an incredibly confident football team. And you saw it from the opener. I mean, from jump in Dublin against Navy, you just saw it right away. It's like, okay. I think they stopped like Navy on like a 4th down on their first series of the game or something like that. And that team just had this mentality. Like when they played Stanford in years before, 2009, 2010, 2011, they had sort of this, I hope we can beat these guys mentality. They didn't have that in 2012. They just went into that game saying, we're Notre Dame, man. We're not afraid of you. And I think that's what it comes down to, Shaun. It's you have to adopt the mentality of we're Notre Dame. And
which plays into,
then you got to go earn it, right?
Which plays into what I thought they did well this weekend with the media. They did a great job of showing in multiple ways we're Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Me and you talk about this all the time. And I Derek Curry is the one that opened my eyes to this, because I never looked at it from this standpoint. And it was him. Spoke to I think CJ Procyse kind of echoed. They were just like, yo, as a freshman, you don't really understand. I mean, you're trying to go to class, make it to practice on time. Like, And then when you're 16, a vast majority, I can say this honestly, vast majority of players that have gone and played football at Notre Dame to this day count it a blessing. A lot of them use the word divine, that they got the opportunity to end up at a school like Notre Dame. But not to be lost on that was Derek Curry saying, look, when I was 16, I 4 for 40, I couldn't grasp the totality of that. I couldn't. But my dad understood it and made sure it was part of my thought process, even though I didn't fully understand it until I actually got there and someone opened my eyes in my sophomore year. And then I said, oh, wow, now I get it. And I've been saying for the longest time, Notre Dame has so much more. Notre Dame shortchanges itself, in my opinion. I know it's been 35 years, but gosh darn it, Notre Dame has so much tradition and power and things going for itself that you don't have to lead with 40 for 40. That's just my opinion. You don't have to. You can, but you don't have to. And that's just it goes back to who is selling the product. You can have the best product in the world. You get the best product in the world to the worst salesman.
Sure. We've seen that. We've seen that at Notre Dame.
We've definitely seen that.
I mean, we went from what Lou Holtz was doing to what Bob Davie and Ty Willingham, and we saw with Charlie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was not a lot of good in Charlie's program after those first couple years. They were 3-9, the field sucked, but he kept signing top classes, you know, because he had something he believed in and he could sell it. Where I would somewhat disagree. Well, I'm not somewhat.
Let me say this, because I said that wrong. I said that wrong. And this is where Derek Curry opened my eyes. You don't leave with 40 for 40 with the kids. You know who to target 40 for 40.
Sure.
You know who needs to hear 40 for 40 and that. Because the truth of the matter is, the kids are going to hear it. Right. But most of those kids aren't going to truly grasp it. They're not. You have to have something else. Look.
Yes.
You have to have something else after you say that grabs these kids, whether it's relationship, whether it's playing time, whether it's system. Look, we can talk about Deuce Knight all you want to. His mother probably loves everything Notre Dame has to offer.
Well, if you ever get Corey Minor on, you need to have him tell people the story about when he was on his visit with his mom.
That's probably a great story.
You know, it backs up your point. I'll say this, Shaun.
Mm-hmm.
I think you always have to lead with your best attribute. And you always lead with the thing that makes you different from everybody else. And so here's my thing about the 4 for 40. And I like how they're kind of doing the 4 for forever thing. Just it kind of, because everybody's kind of stealing there's a reason Urban Meyer and Ohio State started using the 4 for 40. Because they knew that's the only thing that Notre Dame is beating us on right now. That's the only thing they have. If we can neutralize that, we've got the NFL draft, we've got a championship, we've got Big Ten titles, we've got big games, we've got all these bowl success, and they got nothing if we can neuter 4 for 40. That's why you start seeing these SEC teams start talking about that, because Notre Dame's not the only team that does that now, right? And there's a reason why they try to do that, because they're trying to take away the best thing what Notre Dame has. I think where you're correct is you're not going to go get a 5-star quarterback in most instances, 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, just because you sold the 4 for 40 to him. You have to lead with it, but then you have to lay out the other vision of everything else. And that's what's killing Notre Dame right now, right? Is you got Keon Keeley because you sold the 4 for 40 to him. You could not keep him because Bama blows you away in the other areas that matter to Keon Keeley, which is NFL draft and championships and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, you know, you've got to be able to build that other stuff up, but you never stop selling the thing that makes you unique to everybody else. It just can't be the only thing. But in Notre Dame's defense right now, when they're recruiting against Bama and those teams, that's all they've got. They can't point to NFL, they can't recent NFL success. They can't point to championships. They can't point to all that other stuff. At least they couldn't for a while. And that's why it's so important that Marcus Freeman win. And that's why this season is so important, because you've got 3 big-time, big-name programs. And there's this notion that people have of like, Notre Dame constantly gets blown out on the big stage. And my response is, no, they don't. One program has dominated Notre Dame every time they've played in the last 15 years, and it's Bama.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's played Georgia in the Kirby Smart era. Notre Dame has played Georgia twice. They lost by a combined 7 points, and in both games, they had the ball with a chance to win the game with less than 2 minutes in the game. Both times. They've beaten Clemson 2 of the last 3 times they've played. Ohio State has beat them every time, but this last game was at least competitive, right? Before last year, Ohio State had the same, and it was Ohio State and Bama that have just blown Notre Dame out every time they've played. Notre Dame had a lead with less than a minute to go in the third quarter last year. Now, they got outplayed in the fourth quarter significantly, but it wasn't like that. I mean, so there's this notion that, oh, Notre Dame, no, they're not. But at some point in time, you've got to get away from the, well, look how competitive we have been against Georgia. Look, Georgia only beat us by 7 points in 2 matchups. We led against Ohio State with okay, but you lost. You caught the L. That's all that matters, right? So until Notre Dame starts having that on-field success, Shaun, the pitches just aren't going to work with most of the top players that people want, right? And so to me, that's the thing is you've got to have that success, but at the same time, I don't think like you can't go to the football part with these kids when what you're selling isn't as good as the schools you're recruiting against, right?
See, I believe this is my thing. It is just me from personal experience. I might not be as good as that guy. It's almost like, you're looking for a specialist, in the medical field. And you do your research. And for some reason, this specialist, let's say, I don't know if they grade them, if they have a website, I don't know. But this specialist has a higher grade. But I'm not comfortable with them. For some reason, I'm just not comfortable. I talk to him. You have to be able to talk football and still sell. You can't shy away from it. You have to be able to say, "You're darn right, we've been to 3 college football playoffs." I remember when I talked to Chris O'Leary last season when the staff met with the media. He said the locker room is driving this. They've been to 2 college football playoffs.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, there were some leadership issues in the locker room that we didn't foresee.
Right.
But that was the idea. Like, look, the moment you make somebody or you allow someone else's success to make you feel bad about your success.
Right.
Look, this is our resume. We stand on that. No, right. We are not you. We are not Bama. We are not Ohio State. But gosh darn it, I'll tell you who we're not. And I'll tell you who we are. And you can sit up here and talk about 35 years. Guess what? We're independent.
Well, Georgia went 41. This is something I pointed out the other day. Georgia went 41 years between titles.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2021.
Absolutely.
Clemson went 30, or Ohio State went like 31 or 32 years before their title in 02.
Yeah.
Right. I think Woody last won in like 70, 71, something like that. And then they won again in 02.
In 02. Yeah.
Right. And so we've seen this, right? The whole 35, they haven't won in 35 years. So they're never going to win again. I'm like, well, based on what? And I did that article, Shaun, kind of point out, like, this is a silly argument to make. Clemson hadn't won a title in about this.
Since 81, was it 84?
80. No, Georgia won in 80. Clemson won in 81.
Right.
So Clemson was like 36 years between their title. And my whole thing, like I was having this Twitter debate with a guy the other day, and he was really wrong, but he was at least respectful. So I continued the conversation with him. Guy that writes for CBS Sports.
I thought you did a really good job of trying to carry a real conversation.
And he did as well. Like, I think his arguments were bad, and I thought he kept jumping around every time I blew one up. But like, my whole point was, you can't look at a team that's been on the national championship stage 3 times in 9 years and tell me they're not capable of winning a title. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to get into this argument with him because it's hard to do on a platform like Twitter. But the notion, like you and I have talked about this, put Lamar Jackson on that 2017 Notre Dame team and tell me who beats that football team. You know, if you don't lose Malik and Torian Folston and Jerron Jones and Durham Smythe and Shaun Crawford in 2015, I think that team could have played with anybody, even with Brian Van Gorder as the defensive coordinator. And if you simply make a better change, I mean, there's all these ifs with Notre Dame. And there's this notion that, like, every time Notre Dame gets on that stage, they just get beaten, get their brain. And I'm like, you know.
That's not the case.
It's not the case. I mean, Clemson's been blown out twice in the playoff. Ohio State got beat 31-0 in 2016. And the Notre Dame game 2 years later against Clemson was far more competitive than the 2016 Ohio State game, as we all know. My point, Shaun, isn't to say, well, you don't tell kids we're not Bama. What I'm saying is you sell and Notre Dame is in a very unique situation right now.
Yeah.
Going into the 2023 season, which is why I believe this is a huge year for Marcus Freeman. Because right now he can still sell his vision. Brian Kelly in 2011, despite, in 2012, could sell vision even though his team was 8-5 in 2 years. Because he could sell vision. He was still young enough to sell the vision, and they were not good. And they were X number of years removed from 6-6 and 3-9s and all that kind of stuff. And the vision conversation still matters. You can't sell vision after 2014. Like, bro, you've been here 5 years, man. Like, you've had one good year, right? And so he wasn't selling vision after 2016. It was, look where we are. We've been in the playoff twice. We've been in the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, so you're selling that. And so you have something to sell. My point is if you remove the best thing about you, the thing that separates you from everybody else, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because my argument is, Bama's going to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you something right now. The gap between Bama and us as a football program is not nearly as significant as the gap between us and Bama when it comes to the network, the degree, the this, that, and the third, right? And so that's my whole point is you don't remove that. You just can't only focus on that.
Yeah.
And right now, Notre Dame has other things to sell. And I think if this circle back to the original conversation, that's why I'm pushing Under Armour to do this right. Because you can help us get to it's in your best interest if we win. So you can help us. I mean, what's the one of the 2 biggest all-star games you guys play in? The Under Armour game.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, ESPN, can you guys really try to get some Notre Dame kids into this? I mean, there's plenty of things that Under Armour can do to help build Notre Dame up. And imagine what it does for the Under Armour brand if Notre Dame does win.
Was Jeremiah the only one that participated last year?
Braylon James was in it.
You're right.
I believe he was in it. There's only like 3. It was like Braylon James. Oh, man. I'd have to go look it up. But, yeah, there was I think 3 guys in it. Because most of the guys went to the Army All-American game.
Yeah.
Jaden wasn't Greathouse? Was he in it? No. He was supposed to be in it, but I think he was injured. Got injured in the playoff. I think Greathouse was supposed to be in it, but I could be wrong on that, but he got hurt. But, Braylon James was in it. Jeremiah Love was – Jaden Alsbury. He was the other one. Jaden Alsbury was in it. He was at the Under Armour as well. So, I mean, that's my thing, Shaun, is like that's why I'm excited about this era of Notre Dame football. And I understand why people are maybe a little hesitant because it's like, well, we've been here before and it's been 35 years and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like right now some things are lining up for Notre Dame that are unique. If you can get this $10 million a year deal with Under Armour, if you can get $50 million from your next TV deal on top of the 10 you're getting from the ACC, all of a sudden you went from making $35 million a year to 60, 70 million a year. That matters. That stuff matters. And so you've got an energetic, charismatic coach who we both think is like if Marcus Freeman wins, Shaun, it's not because he's charismatic. His charisma is something that helps sell it better, but he's going to win because he's good
He's
or
a good
not.
Coach. Yeah.
Right? Because we've seen charismatic coaches that get their faces beat in because they can't coach.
Yeah.
Right. But right now, you're not. Right now, he's 9-4 as a head coach. Right now, like that's his record. So you've got to sell the other stuff right now. But eventually, that's going to stop, and that's why I think this year is important, and that's why I think the Ohio State game is so big as a fan. But you also got to be careful as a football coach that you're not pumping up too much for a game that's in week 5, and that's why I think playing Ohio State in week 5 is so big because I don't want this whole offseason being focused on revenge and winning this big game, blah, 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 and then you lose the opener and you're just deflated for the next month.
Right.
So I like the fact that there's some mountains, there's some hills we got to climb before we get to the top of that mountain against the Buckeyes on September 23rd is the way you look at it. And I think that's partly why we're having Navy in the opener is huge for Notre Dame, Shaun, because the triple option, at least for the defense, for them, maybe not so much for the offense, but right now, if I'm a defensive player at Notre Dame, I'm not worried about Ohio State or NC State. I got to freaking get ready for this triple option stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that Notre Dame has that's unique this year too, Shaun, is I did an article the other day. They have over 300 career starts on their roster right now. This is a pretty veteran team that's got that really unique blend of some very talented young players.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot. I'm not saying they're going to be as good. I'm just drawing a parallel from a roster building standpoint between that and the 2018 Clemson team. Because we all remember the stars on that team, right? Trevor is a freshman. Ross was a freshman. T was a sophomore. I think Isaiah Simmons was a sophomore on that team. And then Travis Etienne was a sophomore. But the rest of that roster was juniors, seniors, and fifths. I mean, you had Christian Wilkins was a fifth-year guy. You had Trey Lamar was, I think, a fifth-year guy. Hunter Renfro was like a 13th-year senior on that team. It was crazy. I mean, your offensive line were all juniors, seniors, fifths. And I kind of feel like that's where Notre Dame is, right? Like they're a very veteran team. Last year they had like 2 sophomores at bookends at tackle. And this year you've got junior multi-year starters. Aldrich's a junior. You've got Jaden Thomas as a junior. Chris Tyree is a senior. You got this really old team. And then you've got these young cats like Tobias Merriweather and Billy Schrouth and Holden Stace and, guys where you're kind of now mixing them in where they don't have to be the guy, in certain areas, but they've got that kind of that big time talent you can build around. So I'm excited about what this team can be, man. I really am. It's just, but you just got to go out and do it now, right? Like that's the big thing is we can be excited as we want on paper this, on paper that. They remind me of this team or that team. They got to go show it. And that's the great thing about the schedule, Shaun. Plenty of opportunities. They're trying to recruit the heck out of the state of North Carolina, right? They played 2 games in the state of North Carolina this year.
Yeah.
So, and they play 3 teams from the state of North Carolina, right? I mean, so that's big. You're trying to recruit the state of California. You play a game in California. So there's a lot of opportunities for Notre Dame and they play another game in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So you have 3 games in the Carolinas this year. A lot of opportunities for Notre Dame to show some, but they just got to do it, Shaun, right? Like,
That's a lot of driving up and down 95.
I know. Because I'll be doing it too, because I'll be flying into Virginia to see my family.
Yeah.
And then getting in the car and heading down. So I'll take 58 over 95, and I'll spend a lot of time on that. Too much time on 95 this year.
Yeah. Lefty Podcast. As we get ready to close, we'll be back tomorrow. Talking practice, talk some other things. Offensive line, Joe Rudolph, Blake Fisher. We'll have their comments from the press conference today. But before we leave, I want to get into something that I don't know if you're a boxing fan, Brian.
Used to be. I haven't watched it in a while, but I used to be. Grew up one.
Big time fight this weekend. And Malik asked me, who are you betting on? And I told him, I said, I wouldn't put my money on this fight.
You did tell me that too.
I wouldn't bet your money, my money. I just wouldn't. But I thought about this and it made me think about Notre Dame. In this particular fight, I felt like Bud Crawford was the wild card. And what I meant by that is, it really didn't matter what Errol Spence did. The fight was going to be determined by which Bud Crawford showed up. When it comes to Ohio State and Notre Dame, and pretty much all of the big games, Notre Dame's a wild card team in the matchups. Because it's going to be about which Notre Dame shows up.
Right.
For me. It's not a question of whether or not matchups, this check, that check. Which Notre Dame shows up that night? Who's on that field? And it made me really think about this season, how it's going to play out. And that, like you said, with Notre Dame being such a wild card, they really might have a better chance than most people give them of making it to the college football playoff and advancing.
Yeah.
Once they get there.
When I look at it, Shaun, like, look, we're talking what Notre Dame can be. We don't know what they're going to be, but I'll say this: if you're gonna do legitimate analysis, in my view, you have to be able to look at a program and say, what is this team on its best day, and then say, well, can this team be that consistently or not? And any team can have an upset win. I mean, South Carolina in 2019 was a 4-8 team and beat Georgia at Georgia.
At Georgia, yep.
What were you on your best day? On your best day, you were capable of beating Georgia. On their worst day, barely. It's not sustainable. And that's kind of how Notre Dame had been in the past, right, Shaun? Like, a lot of their big wins were like, that was a bad day for that team, or they were missing this guy, or they were missing that guy, right? Like, oh yeah, you beat Clemson, but they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, and they didn't have Tyler Davis, and they didn't have Mike Jones, and blah 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 blah. You beat this team without this guy. You went down and beat Oklahoma, but they weren't that good. There was always like these things that were kind of these caveats, and that's what makes the Clemson game last year so intriguing. Because this is not a vintage Clemson team. It was not. It is not 2018 Clemson, 2019 Clemson. It's not even 2020 Clemson. It was still a good football team. And on Notre Dame's best day, they absolutely destroyed Clemson, right? Like, this wasn't just like you guys played really well and you guys won by 14 going away. This was a complete domination. It was 28-0 at one point in time. I mean, it was just and Notre Dame threw. If I'd have told you before the game, Notre Dame is only going to throw for 85 yards against Clemson, you'd be like, oh my, or Drew Pine's going to throw for 85 yards against Clemson. You're like, okay, either A, they get killed, or B, he gets hurt in the first half.
Yeah.
Right. If I'd have told, if we'd have got on the prediction show, if I'd have come on Lucky Lefty, hey guys, I'm going to do my prediction for tonight's Notre Dame Clemson game. Here's my prediction. Notre Dame is going to pass for 85 yards. And they're going to beat Clemson by 21 points, and it won't be that close. And they're going to run all over Clemson tonight. You'd have been like, Brian, drugs are not good. You need to stay off the drugs. You make yourself look bad. You're trying to be professional. People are going to leave your site because you're just talking nonsense right now.
Right.
Right? That'd have been stupid. They're going to run all over this team with all these first-round draft picks and who don't let people run on them. And you're not going to throw the ball on them. You're not going to be balanced at all. And you're just going to run all over them. Come on now. This just doesn't make any sense. This is the team that like 3 weeks ago just lost to Stanford. Right? Come on, man. But that's what they did, because we saw last year when Notre Dame was in their best, they are really good. Then we saw them against USC a few weeks later. They weren't at their best. They weren't at their worst. They were missing some guys. USC was the better team. But Notre Dame showed like, hey, we can play with these guys.
Yeah.
Same thing against Ohio State, where what we didn't see last year, for all the issues that we had last year with Notre Dame, what we didn't see last year was that game where Notre Dame showed up and didn't show up. You know what I mean? That we had seen so many times in the past, especially in the big moments. I mean,
right.
Like, the issue with Kelly is he never lost in after the reboot. you had that 2017 season where there was a couple disappointing losses, but Notre Dame after 2017 never lost to a team that they were supposed to beat. I mean, literally, I don't even mean that like as an exaggeration. They literally never lost to an unranked team the rest of the way. I mean, their losses were to like top 15 Michigan, national championship Clemson in 18. You lost to a top 10 Georgia team on the road. You lost to a top 15 Michigan team on the road. You lost to the national or playoff team Clemson, and you lost to the national champions. And then 2021, you lost to another playoff team.
Yeah.
But what they would do is they just wouldn't show up in a lot of these big games. You think of the ACC title game in 2020, or it's like that team was just not ready to play. You look at the Cincinnati game in 2021. We could do this all day, Shaun. Miami 2017.
Yeah.
What we saw last year is one thing that Marcus Freeman showed he can do is he can emotionally get his team ready to play in those big moments. Now he and his staff got to prove that we can go and play in a style of football that executes at a high level.
Yeah.
But the thing with Notre Dame last year was they weren't emotionally ready to play against Marshall. They weren't emotionally ready to play against Stanford. But in the big moments, the one that we've always been concerned about, they were ready to play. It's going to be a lot easier for Marcus Freeman to figure out how to get his team emotionally ready to play for Central Michigan and Duke in year 2 than it will be, hey, we can get these guys ready for the big moments. And so I think that's another encouraging sign that says this program is getting closer. The question now, Shaun, is what kind of jump will they make this year? That's what we don't know at this point in time. And then, but I think they're taking steps program-wise.
Yeah.
Not just football-wise, but just the branding is getting better. We've asked them to do more things with social media. They're starting to get to that point. This big recruiting push that Chad Bowden and his recruiting office are doing today with all these commits tweeting out all this stuff about Notre Dame. Who else is doing that right now? Nobody's doing that.
Nobody's doing it.
And so they're starting to do things that are starting to separate you. And this is why I think the rest of the college football world is a little bit nervous right now, because if Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman wins this year, and what I mean wins is gets to the playoff and shows they belong, which means you got at least 2 out of 3 wins over Clemson, Ohio State, and USC.
Yeah.
Let's say they beat Ohio State and USC and Clemson beats them by a field goal at their place and Notre Dame's in the playoff and they play Georgia and it's a 4-quarter game. Good luck trying to recruit against Notre Dame now. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. On top of the fact that what's a little scary for some of these teams is Florida State's starting to recruit a little better. Did you see the big-time pickup they had the other day? Yeah. Right? Like Mike Matthews doesn't pick – who'd he pick the other day, right? Like I'm trying to remember. Who did Mike Matthews? Because he was looking at Georgia.
He was looking at Georgia originally.
Right? And I'm all of a sudden having a mental blank on who – he picked Tennessee. That's right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the point that I was making earlier with somebody else is he doesn't go to Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State.
Right.
He goes to Tennessee. NIL is starting to kind of even the playing field out a little bit. And the emergence of good Tennessee made a great hired head coach. Florida State turns out has made a good hired head coach. And then he's made some really good hires with his staff, which he did in his first year. And all of a sudden, Bama's losing a kid here, a kid there. Georgia's losing a kid here and a kid there. And then if Marcus Freeman goes out there and wins, gap closing, Shaun, isn't just about you raising yourself up. It's also about doing things to bring other guys down. That's what's so big about some of the pickups they've got. That's what's so big about getting Kingston. It's not that he's a really good player, in my opinion, but it's he didn't go to Ohio State.
He didn't go to Ohio State, yep.
He didn't go to USC. Those are the other finalists. He had offers from Bama, Georgia. And when you look at some of the guys they've gotten in the last couple of years, Shaun, that's the big thing. You kept that guy from going there, and that's a big part of this. But it's not just you, because Notre Dame can only win some of those battles. It's Florida State's doing it.
Yeah.
It's Tennessee's doing it. It's LSU's hopefully doing it.
Yeah.
It's Miami's doing it. It's Texas is starting to do it. And they're all just little nitpick here, just little chinks in the armor for Georgia and Alabama. And they may look like the big bad boys now, but it just takes out – because, what I mean? In 2014, who was sitting here at the end of the 2014 season thinking this 4-loss team at Clemson is going to be a dominant program for the next decade. Who you thought, they're going to be pretty good with Deshaun Watson, but they were pretty good with Tosh Boyd. It wasn't like Deshaun Watson. I mean, he'd missed some games. He was a top 50 kid, not a top 5 kid. He wasn't like Trevor Lawrence. Who sit there and said they're going to go toe-to-toe Bama the next 2 years to beat Bama?
Yeah.
Who thought that? No, nobody thought that till they did it. I mean, until they won that title in 2016, the word Clemsoning was a popular phrase.
It's a popular phrase.
Right? So I get tired of this. Well, this will never happen. This will never happen. This will never happen. This has changed. That's changed. Clemson can go from 1981 to 2016 and win a title, but I'm supposed to believe that for some reason Notre Dame can. I just don't buy that. But I will say this. It's a little harder at Notre Dame, which is why you need all the right ingredients. And one of those ingredients is a dynamic head coach. The last 2, I would really say 1. Charlie Weiss had a dynamic personality, but I wouldn't call him a dynamic coach because he didn't have necessarily the resume or a lot of other things to be that. But the last truly dynamic head coach Notre Dame had was not Brian Kelly. He's a very good head coach. He's a very proven head coach who did a lot of great things for Notre Dame. He's not dynamic. He's not that guy like who was the guy that told the story? It was Tony Rice talking about how when he did the in-home with him, was this like mom or grandma said, you're going to go play for that little man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he just had it you wouldn't think he would. He's going to go to some house in South Carolina and that guy's going to make that kind of impact. He just had it, man. He just had it. And from that standpoint, I believe Marcus Freeman has it. Now we just got to find out if he can coach the way that Lou Holtz coached, right? That's going to be the big question mark. And that's what gets me fired up because you do need that at Notre Dame. So with Florida, same with Florida. So I pointed this out in the story the other day. Do you know that Florida has won 3 national titles, right? With Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. Do you know that in the years where Meyer or Spurrier was not their head coach, their win percentage is like the 580s? Which is very mediocre.
That's not shocking, though.
Yeah, but they're a program that needs that kind of dynamic head coach to win. They're not Bama where you can win a title with Gene Stallings with all due respect. Right. They're not Miami that can win it with Larry Coker. Although you could say, well, he didn't build it, which is fair. You need a dynamic coach to win at Notre Dame in today's era. I won't deny that. It's easier to win at Ohio State. It's not easy. It's just easier. You can win at Georgia with the right head coach, right? But you don't need the perfect head coach. It's a little harder at Notre Dame. Yeah. That's just a reality of it. And in that regard, Marcus Freeman has the chops as far as the selling it. We just got to find out and that's why I kind of like the idea of the 4 for 40, man, because I just think he has a way, and this current staff has a way of really selling this in an effective manner, which is why the recruiting has gone up, even though the results on the field haven't necessarily improved. Now you just got to be able to sell. Your vision only lasts so long, Shaun, right? Before the vision gets drowned out by who you are based on on-field results. And right now, he can still sell the vision.
Lucky Podcast. Thanks for everybody joining us tonight. Impromptu show. I wanted to talk about this apparel deal. What we saw today from Notre Dame media, the rollout of the uniforms and everything going on. Great conversation. I thank my guy Brian Driscoll for stepping in for Left today. We'll be back tomorrow. And don't forget, CFB Nation, exclusively. We give you audio edibles each and every day. Go right there, Lucky Podcast. Along with other great shows. Don't forget, we spin it different. For Brian Driscoll, I'm Shaun Davis. We'll see you tomorrow for another edition of the Lucky Lefty Podcast. Have a great evening, but most of all, make sure that you spin it different.